service for more than 15 years. And he has been in Canberra since September of 2010. I've noticed also, because I've been doing some work on this, that he has had connections to India and Sri Lanka. So he has had an experience with many different countries, I think, from Brussels, but also from the delegation side. So it's a great pleasure to have him with us today, especially since also we'll be celebrating the anniversary of Australian-EU relations. And there have been a lot of activities this past year. We're in New Year this time, it's not finished really. So welcome, Andrea, and as I told you, you all have 20 minutes. Okay? Each.
Thank you very much, Pascal. And I'm very glad to be here. Thank you. I'm very happy to be invited to this interesting seminar. As you rightly pointed out, I have been in Australia for about 2 years, and what I thought I would do today, complementary to what other speakers are going to say, hopefully, because we have not prepared in advance. I wanted to give you a bit of an overview on about where we stand in terms of bilateral relations between the European Union and Australia. Just a point of clarification, I work for the delegation of the European Union in Australia, which works very much in cooperation with bilateral embassies. We have 23 member states who have a diplomatic mission in Australia, and it doesn't mean that we replace their work. It means that we work in very, very much cooperation, and in certain areas, of course, we have the lead when we discuss on behalf of the European Union with the Australian government. It is very much us, but in some other areas, obviously, member states have to maintain their prerogatives. Now, starting from the beginning, symbolically, last year, 2012, we celebrated, as President said, 50 years of diplomatic relations. There was when, back in 1962, Australia sent its first ambassador to Brussels, accredited to Brussels. And of course, in these 50 years, relations have developed immensely. So we moved from a period where, of course, the UK was outside the European Community, European Union. Australia had a kind of a privileged relationship with the UK, to a situation where we discuss where the UK is, of course, fully integrated into the EC. If I can go a bit backward, 2 years ago, 2011, it was also a very important year because we had the visit of the President of the European Commission, José Manuel Barroso. That was the first visit to Australia of the European Commission President in 30 years. So it was quite it was symbolic, but it was quite significant. And in fact, it was when President Barroso came to Australia that the leaders decided to engage in a negotiation to conclude a treaty-level agreement, treaty-level framework agreement, which will replace what we have in place right now. We don't have a kind of a treaty-level agreement. We have a partnership framework, which has not per se legal value. This treaty is going to replace that. And at the moment, we are fully engaged in the negotiations. So I would say we have perhaps covered 90% of the ground. There's still some issues to be discussed, to be resolved, but we are well advanced. What is going to change between now and the moment we will have a treaty level? I think it's more symbolic and it's going to add up more into the relationship and put the relationship on a much more stable footing. One if I can say, I mean, in my experience in the last couple of years, one of the issues which we are confronted, which we are still confronted, is the way the European Union is portrayed in Australia. Very much, of course, still now we have had quite a serious economic crisis within the Europe. But I must say, if you read the Australian press, very often you can come up with the impression that tomorrow the European Union is going to be completely bankrupt. The euro is, if you read back articles in the press last year, you would be very surprised if the euro, to learn that the euro still exists, that the European Union is still there. There have been hundreds of articles announcing the imminent disappearance of the European Union. And I'm very happy to say that we are now in 2013. We can look back to previous years, and of course not only the euro is still there, the European Union is still intact and prepared to welcome another member, which will bring it to its membership to 28 states. But we have equip ourselves with a system which would allow us to cope with the challenges of economic and monetary union. I'm not saying that the crisis is over, but I would argue that we have taken incremental steps to complete the economic and monetary union, to the euro area as on a much more secure but I mean, I don't blame the Australian press, because in reality, I think the European affairs are followed very much from London. London has a very particular vision of the European Union and the relationship in Europe. So it is very much biased, but I think it masks the importance of the bilateral relationship between the European Union and Australia. So there is much more than the euro crisis in Europe, and there is much more than this kind of distorted vision of the EU between the EU and Australia. And I think our relationship since the visit of President Barroso, but even before, it has expanded, it has developed, and we, I can say, we talk and we cooperate with Australia much more than we argue. It is true, and maybe Nina will say something, or my other will say something later, that the relationship has not always been very healthy and very simple, very easy. We have argued over trade policy, for example, or agriculture, or subsidies over the years. But today we are much more into how can we cooperate more rather than how can we argue on issues. The EU is still the largest source of foreign direct investment to Australia. There are about 2,400 companies, EU companies, which have a presence in Australia, with an investment of about 270 billion, or about 14% of sales in Australia. So economically, we have a very, very strong relationship. We estimated that about 500,000 jobs in Australia have been created or exist because of the links which Australia has with the European Union. So it is quite significant. Seen from the EU, Australia remains also an important economic and trade partner. It ranks, I think, as the 15th largest trading goods partner of the EU. Whereas seen from Australia, the European Union represents the third largest goods market after China and Japan. So we do have a very, very strong relationship. For Australia, the EU represents also the second major destination for its total foreign investment, I think about 30%. And it's third largest merchandise trading partner after China and the Asian countries. And it is still the largest partner for trading in services, with a value of about 20 billion or 19% of Australia's trade sector. So this is just a few figures which I wanted to throw to say that we have a very deep economic and trade relationship. Although, and once again I come back to the argument I was making before, if very often if you read articles in the press or statistics or trade statistics, it is very convenient to break up the European Union into UK, France, Germany, etc. And then, of course, if you do that, European countries disappear at the bottom of the statistics. But I think it makes a lot of sense to look at the European Union as a whole, because it is an integrated market. We have a single trade policy which is managed at the EU level, so it doesn't make sense really to break it down in the small pieces. With Australia, we do work very closely in the international forum. Now that, of course, in the framework of the G20, we coordinate our positions. We have a very regular coordination mechanism and dialogues. We do also work together in relationship to the Asia-European meeting, ASEM, which is a kind of an international organization bringing together Asian countries and European Union, and Australia has joined just a couple of years ago. And of course, we do coordinate very tightly on UN-related global issues. Now, especially now that Australia has joined the UN Security Council. I just want to give you a rough idea on the depth and diversity of the exchange and dialogue we have with Australia. We have, on a yearly basis, an agriculture, trade and marketing dialogue, animal welfare dialogue, education, environment, climate change, foreign policy, research and development, macroeconomic dialogue, migration, security. So this is just to give you an indication on the breadth and diversity of discussion which we have, both of course at the ministerial level, but very regularly at the senior official or official level. And we cover really the whole spectrum of relations. But we do not only talk, we also have a quite large network of agreements. I referred before to the framework agreement, which will be sort of a global treaty agreement. But apart from that, we have specific and thematic agreements between the EU and Australia. And I will refer to a few of them. Linking of the emission trading system. This is something which was agreed, announced in last August, which we are going to embark into negotiations to have a full linking of our trading system, so climate change. We have an agreement with Australia on passenger name record. This might sound a bit too detailed or too small, but that it's an important actually agreement because it allows the Australian air carriers Qantas to transfer data from passenger traveling from the EU to the Australian border and vice versa. So, and that's something which can facilitate very much cooperation in combating terrorism and organized crime. Another area where we cooperate and we talk a lot with Australia is development cooperation. We have agreed to delegate the management of some of our development aid projects. So, for example, Australia will be able to manage some of projects funded by the EU in the Pacific, in Fiji, and we will do the same for managing some funds, Australian funds in South Sudan. That of course the idea, the rationale behind is that we will exploit the comparative advantage of each other in the respective regions. On development cooperation, we have a very, very regular contact. Australia is, of course, the largest donor in the Pacific, but the European Union comes only second, and we're not very far behind. So we obviously we have a mutual interest in coordinating our work, and not only our cooperation, but our political dialogue engagement with countries in crisis or with countries experiencing a particularly difficult position like Fiji. We have with Australia concluded in 2010 an agreement in trading wine, another I think important milestone. This allows the protection of geographical indications, and it is supposed to facilitate trade between the two bodies, between the EU and Australia. We also have a security of information agreement. This allows the EU and Australia to exchange secure classified information, and again, it can sound a bit trivial, but in reality it does facilitate cooperation, exchange of information, interaction on many sensitive areas like military cooperation or the coordination of sanctions between the two of us. Lastly, we are also negotiating a separate crisis management agreement, which once concluded will make it easier for Australia to contribute to EU crisis management operation overseas. So once concluded, it means that Australia can send their forces and to take part in an integrated EU crisis management operation. These are only a few of the latest agreements. We also have agreements in relation to conformity assessment, certificated marketing. We have an agreement on scientific and technical cooperation. So just an idea to give you a little bit of an overview of what we have in place. We look forward to now in 2013 and from now on to continue this cooperation and hopefully to conclude the framework agreement so that we have in place a stable, more stable legal framework to raise our work. I think that concludes a little bit my presentation, but of course I'll be happy depending also on what other colleagues are going to say. I know that looking at the program that you have covered quite a lot of specific subject areas, so I thought I was not going to get into any substance of that, but provide you with the
Thank you very much.